Comprehensive introduction, Rick. And I'll take just a minute here, add a few little details. I'm really grateful for the preceding papers in this IMS summer series. With the interest in structural design and art and architecture at diverse world sites. Frequent questions raised the prospect for future related standard measure research, which is, as Rick has reviewed, in line with my research and presentation this evening. Jim Reed's August IMS newsletter presents a good preview of my presentation and the long history of my related research with standard measures, geometry measure, design formats. Jim's cover for this Cubit Connection book illustrates images of the worldwide scope of my ongoing research exploration over these 7 decades. I had the rare good fortune to engage in a worldwide Tree of Life theme research of the Izapa Temple Center in southern Mexico with the BYU New World Archaeological Foundation's Izapa project from 1965 to 1982, and have continued independent research to the present date for these 7 decades. Numerous scholars have contributed to my research over the years. Following Izapa's discovery, hundreds of successful geometry measure tests and calendar observatory sites in museums and archaeology sites throughout Mesoamerica, Peru, North America have been successful and expanded across Europe, the Mediterranean, Asia, Pacific, and Atlantic islands. This world history research exploration has enhanced studies with RTI 3D photo imaging restoration of the weathered, eroded sculptures at Izapa with the aid of Dr. Jason Jones. Empirical data has been the constant objective. Izapa, Mexico, Ancient Temple Observatory. Izapa's 260-day calendar, plus Middle Eastern cubits and geometry are key to my studies of Mesoamerican antiquities. The broad scope at Izapa includes from the beginning Olmec around 1500 BC, actually much earlier in its origin. Izapa at about 550 BC coming in, then the Maya from 200 to 900 AD, plus migrations to South and North America.
Good.
So this is just showing a combination of pictures of my publications, which have been mentioned, and the NWF project reports, upper left, below that, Izapa Sacred Space, the English, Spanish version, the upper right, and then the far upper right, we have the introduction to visitors' guide to the ruins, and then the Cubit Connection book, lower right, with Jim's amazing cover design. All right. Izapa, southern Mexico, is near the Pacific coast. Located, I'm going to round this off at 15 degrees. Technically, naked eye astronomy can't measure the astronomical data. Northern latitude to define the sacred 260-day, 9-month human pregnancy time with the sun's 2 zenith passages on August 13th and 260 days later on April 30th. The Olmecs sought out the Izapa location and its amazing landscape to document this this amazing site and calendar. A geographer, Vince Malmstrom's early survey of Mesoamerican solstice sites led to this discovery at Izapa in 1973. Without any archaeological data, he really argued strongly for this calendar system being invented at Izapa. At least we can say recorded it in great detail here like nowhere else. This 260-day cycle could be the most important mental construct in Mesoamerica, according to Michael Coe. In his Book of the Maya, beginning, before they were able to zero in on what is the actual origin of it. This map is then showing the location of these major regional sites, and should be very familiar to all of us. The 260-day gestation cycle is very represented on this calendar circle by the yellow, from measuring these dates from August 13th to April 30th for 260 days. The green at the top then is the remaining summer season of the year. This is an ancient 9-month pregnancy for childbirth, the important creation of man, we can say, like nowhere else. The Izapa diorama I constructed in 1976 for the NWF's 25th annual commemoration at Brigham Young University. And the inset is showing the geometry, composition, layout, which we can go into some detail later. Now the cubit connections, ancient world migrations, major interests here this evening, shows discoveries of standard measures at Izapa used in design, planning of architecture and art throughout Mesoamerica and diffused throughout the Americas. These originated from ancient Egypt and Babylon, which is the Royal Babylonian and Royal Egyptian cubits, and shown in the reconstruction there, and the breakdown as of these cubit rods by the halving method. Izapa stela were first thought to be unreadable, freehand carvings. 2 standard units of measure, already mentioned, Egypt and Babylon, are shown on this measuring of Stela 5 in part. And this Tree of Life monument has the doubling or halving as a standard in the lengths of the different parts of the bodies and the tree. Here are just 2 shots of our measuring of the Stela 5 Tree of Life stone. At left, I'm measuring the rod that extends between 2 diagonals at the top, which is the Izapa Babylonian cubit. And then on the right, measuring the width of the upper tree trunk, which is 1/4 scale. The diameter of the geometry we'll show shortly is the full cube. So this just shows me measuring on Stela 11. Now, this was a real jewel. We located or observed this statue excavated at Uchitan, Oaxaca, on the Tehuantepec coast, and in the National Museum. It's life-size, And this bearded statue dates to 100 BC, contemporary with his Appa. The forearms elbow to fingertips on both arms, stiff boarded, measures exactly the Babylonian cubit. So the migration origins interest. According to the Quiche Highland Maya Popol Vuh, the first ancestors migrated from across the Western Sea, from the region of Babylon, as they define it in the modern world. In my 2007 expedition with Gerald to Oman, Southern Arabia, we went there to investigate this origin claim with some surprising success. Here's a map of one of the primary travel routes between Babylon and Egypt, passing through Palestine, down the Red Sea coast, and then over to Oman. This is along the famous frankincense trade route, possible route, of course, from what we were looking for, which we found. Here on the coast, northeast of the capital of Salalah, is this large open sea bay with a citadel and a docking of ships next to the citadel, and then a small shrine in the north section of the citadel is we're measuring here, cut stones on top of the entry walls. Here, 1 Babylonian cubit. Well, good introduction to this seaport for a potential worldwide spread of this culture of measuring. Another jewel is this Babylonian geometry school tablet, which was excavated and documented being used for teaching the geometry in the school. The different exercises are independently done. I extracted those and combined them in that table to the lower right, lower left, excuse me. So we've got 6 different exercises there. 1, figure inside the circle. 2, circle in the square. 3, square quartered. 4, square diagonals. 5, diagonals in 2 vertical halves of the square, and then line notes as points of composition reference. When we combine them all together, there we have our golden mandala geometry way back, which was not revealed to the general public, kept sacred and secret. In 1967, architect Tons Runes of Denmark issued a 2-volume study on geometry of the ancient Middle East. He analyzed Egyptian manuscripts that used a geometric scheme for art. This clay tablet from Saqqara, dated to 2700 BC, is believed to be the first illustration that documents the system. It shows the stylized Egyptian human figure, recognized everywhere being the same, drawn with dots on a vertical scale from 1 to 18. This figure was composed to these dots, reference points at the forehead, neck, armpit, elbow, groin, knee, and foot. What did it all mean? Brune's analysis shows that the dot points conform to a secret geometric design. And that was given to the sculptors in all of their work in the in the Egyptian stone sculpting, but the geometry was never revealed. Believed to have been kept secret as sacred knowledge for 2,500 years. And it was erased with sculptures when they were completed by the Egyptian temple priesthood to protect this priestcraft knowledge. I discovered and analyzed the seated figure on the left, Egyptian, and found the same composition, geometric composition to this seated figure, which was an exciting discovery. To the right is the analysis of the Egyptian drawing with two figures being composed within the same geometric composition, mandala. And we find the exact same thing at Azapa on Stela 5. Now, a few more illustrations from Egypt. This famous unusual temple design on the left, and shows the temple at Karnak, Egypt, with the human figure canon, and it's been composed in a couple of ways, but a very convincing dimension, incorporating the Osiris journey. Here's two Egyptian relief figures, the Dorjan sculpture, and on the left, and relief of the New Kingdom 19th Dynasty tomb, Seti I, on the right. Here again, incorporating two figures within the same geometry. This famous Zodiac of Dendra on the ceiling of a temple room is analyzed by my colleague associate, Dr. Lance Harding, in his research showing the full geometric mandala composition here. Very impressive. Lastly, the Great Sphinx at Giza, and the hexagon geometry by Lance Harding. Now we go to Palestine, Jerusalem, Temple Mount geometry. The same Egyptian cubit is called the cubit of Moses in its application to temple architecture design at Jerusalem. The overlay is very detailed, but it illustrates the centrality orientation to the Temple Mount eastward, and locates the temple on the north in that yellow rectangle, and orientation dates. Too much detail here to discuss. However, it's will be available in publication. In the world, the primary measures of the civilization used Middle East cubit and geometry from the Olmec down to the Aztec and beyond. Here, we just provide this table, giving these periods A through E of the major cultural divisions, as we've discussed previously. So Mesoamerica expanded survey beginning to 15 degrees, Zapa, Olmec to 60-day observatory, bearded new foreigners added to Zappa's 260-day observatory. In this map, then Zappa shown as the major center revealing this cultural expansion. The old famous Olmec head at La Venta, Tabasco. When I studied this and applied the geometry test, that's how it turned out with the overlay. Both the facial features and the helmet are composed within this one geometry. The width of the face between the side straps of the helmet measures 3 Babylonian cubits. Palenque is so famous, it can't escape. The Chiapas, Mexico. Enormous amount of research has been done at Palenque by many scholars. And Tablet of the Cross, classic Maya, applying the mandala test reveals the geometric underlying format. Central tree and other figures follow vertical and diagonal lines. The Babylonian cubit is the basis of most Palenque's art and also architecture. Cannot escape the Aztec calendar stone, famous, the most revealing geometry in all of Mesoamerican architecture and art. And many have tried to give us a picture of the origin when we when we applied the mandala to it, everything fell in line. So we have the solution to the mystery of this design with the golden mandala. The 8 sets of angles equals the diagonals of the mandala square, and the inner circle of glyphs equals the diagonals of the rectangular halves of the square. The diameter was decoded by permission of the National Museum, opening this up for us in 2014. And we were able to measure the diameter of the full circle, undistorted, and discovered it measures 5 Babylonian cubits. So we rest our case in the longevity of this geometric measure design system over these many centuries, far longer history than even in the Middle Eastern origin of it. We can make a comparison. The people just had these standards. They did not know where they came from. If we compare it to our own measuring system today, the foot or yard and metric systems, how many people know where they originate from? But once they are established in the economy, trade system, there's no reason to change them, although they can be changed for political reasons in local areas. But that they can survive for such a long history is pretty miraculous. We don't make any case for any specific culture bringing it. It probably was transported across the seas many times. There's Alpha Mexico showing the Royal Babylonian Egyptian and Babylonian cubits in these two figures. The one on the left is the geometric design inside of the carved scene, which was my first exercise. And the diameter of the circle is, as previously stated, the Babylonian cubit, and composition, geometric composition provides a narrative, hidden narrative format for decoding and reading what is there. And then the one on the right encapsulates the whole stone to its four boundaries. And we find that that figure documents the Egyptian cubit. Pretty amazing that they could have both. But in reality, these two cubits do overlap in the mathematical analysis, which my colleague has studied. The Zapastella 5 tree measures the Maya 5 world ages again. 4 earthquake, 4 water, 4 rain, 4 wind, jaguar are the names. Now we're looking at the history tree. The Tree of Life World History Tree is the same in the Mesoamerican world. And we look at that tree trunk, and that gnarled lower half of the tree, very interactive with the figures on both sides, is the World History Tree. Now we have other illustrations documenting that the measurements of that world history with our cubit measures. We're not just guessing
On the tree trunk.
on the tree trunk. It's a precision detail. Okay, we go back to Zapastella 4 and its geometric mandala there, and shows both the Egyptian and Babylonian cubits being composed to the same geometry. This is not a strange puzzling exercise. This system we discovered, Lance Sargent and I, in our survey of the British Museum by permission. We found that the Assyrian sculptures frequently that are housed there, same sculpture has both cubits as well. It was an established system in Babylonian and Egyptian cubits in the same sculpture. Culture transfers, about the only way one can answer this one. Okay, this was the last sculpture to be uncovered before publication of Maya Zappa sculpture text for NWF, and the local farmer preparing to plant, his hoe hit the top of a stone, and he started to remove it and found it was not just some stone getting in the way, but a buried sculpture standing upright, and it had been totally covered by erosion. The only stela that has no panels. This argues for the earlier Olmec time period of Azapa, and the distinctive Azapa sky and ground panels don't exist, although they do exist in abbreviated forms in concept at least. The Maya understood the link between geometry and the natural world by the sun, rays, and other features shown here in this window between three stone sculptures in front of the Group B plaza. That one being composed to the geometry and standard measurement. Pretty convincing. Migrations. We're looking at the tracking of migrations. Many have studied across the seas, showing scattered evidences of transfer of cultures on a worldwide scale. There's Alpha Plaza B on August 13th and April 30th. Here, these pillar balls document the zenith, where there is no shadow, with the sun overhead on these two zenith dates, measuring the 260 days of creation cycle. It's commonly believed now by scholars that the three pillar balls also represent the three stars of Orion's turtle. The three sculptures in the background are behind these pillars, document the journey. So on far right, Stele 10 shows the spirit of a child in the clouds descending to the pregnant mother leaning against the tree for birth at the end of the 260 days. And then we have in the center, Stele 9, the spirit rises to heaven on the angel wings at summer solstice. Then on the far left, Stele 8, Orion imagery is represented here, and a connection also to the far west Plaza A. Here is a historic event that is being repeated at Azapa, probably in 2010 with our Maya journey with the Quiche and Kachikal Indians performing this traditional ceremony, temple calendar ceremony, probably for the first time in 1,000 years almost. And Jim Reed was very instrumental in making this possible. And Mary Rittinger with Maya Conservancy. 3 hour long, and we'll comment here on this a little bit further. Rigoberto, there on the right, the spiritual leader from Omestanago. The Earth Creation Circle includes plants, animals, etc., and represents the creation of man. 12 Mayans count the 260 days, the 9-month pregnancy cycle of a child, God's greatest creation. Every human being is a miracle that we celebrate
At Izapa.
at Izapa. The Popol Vuh, this version by Alan Christensen, literal translation from the early record of the Popol Vuh in the Quiche language that he was able to obtain in Momestanango, and with their permission, make a literal translation. The map is illustrated in the community center at Momestanango, showing the historic awareness of the world history, origins from the Middle East, coming throughout the Americas and spreading in both directions. This was interesting, not in conflict with science, but in their traditions and historic beliefs in harmony with the knowledge growing. Okay. Again, we are just showing the Maya 260-day calendar beginning at Ixtapa, Mexico, around 1500 BC, and then at 550 BC to about 1000 AD, a new era at Ixtapa. North latitude and antiquities built with Middle Eastern cubits. Calendar and cubits were taken throughout Mesoamerica and to North and South America, showing the map, showing these major illustrations of this dispersion previously mentioned. Yeah. All right, on the left, the Teotihuacan, famous ruins, beginning dates of the project was established with ceramics at 50 BC, and that is pushed back a little bit further, 100 BC. The pyramid of the moon, pyramid of the sun, to the zenith sunset for the 260-day calendar.
They also had the cubits.
They also had the cubit standard measure here, and my comparison of the Ixtapa map is compelling evidence for influencing the settlement of Teotihuacan. The one on the right, picture on the right, is from Copan, Honduras. That dates close to the time period of Ixtapa, on the about 400 AD to 800 AD migrants settling there on the Ixtapa latitude. Here's the picture, my geometry reconstruction at Teotihuacan. Same geometry that overlays the Ixtapa map on a massive scale. This illustration taken from Ixtapa to Yucatan, builders incorporated the 260-day count on the pyramids with 65 steps times 4 sides equals 260-day calendar count plus the cubits. And this has been well illustrated by scientist Aaron Hendrickson and is well known throughout the Maya culture. One on the left, Etzna, late formative. On the right, Uxmal, Yucatan, the classic Maya, Mayapan on the base. So it's counting the steps and the tiers and windows and such things, illustrating widely this same concept of calendar relation. The National Geographic LiDAR photos, which has now shocked us with its massive 60,000 structures predicted, pyramids, roads, fortifications, agriculture, corrals beneath the dense Guatemalan jungles. National Geographic picture here illustrated that and gave us another century of research that scholars now are looking through the jungle canopy and seeing the remnants of earlier structures, as illustrated here at Tikal. Migrations, 100 BC to 60-day Maya calendar and Middle Eastern cubits were taken along the Pacific coast from Azapa, 15 degrees north latitude, south to Nazca, Peru, at 15 degrees south latitude. On a hunch, I pursued this, suspecting that based upon the equator, that there could be a parallel system in South America, Peru. And this is where we were taken, to Nazca. And I'm seeing Azapa's system revealed there. This is most telling on a bench, 180-foot geometric design of Zapa's temple center, exactly composed with the Babylonian cubit. The Egyptian cubit is also involved in different lengths and measurements, and
Of the Nazca
of
lines.
the Nazca lines. So this was startling, to say the least, to find this. To find this kind of relationship was easy by just applying that data from Azapa and seeing how it matches so much of what's going on at Nazca. From the temple, the only large temple, Kawachi at Nazca, its center point became the measuring system across the landscape, 9 miles from there to the picture below, showing a design expanding the alignment system. So with that quick, very all too brief view, we traveled to North America. So here at the Perron Gap, southwestern Utah, under a contract, government contract, I was able to research here in Perron Gap, finding this observatory, 260-day calendar petroglyphs and cairns, and believed to be from trade, turquoise trade with Mexico, coming from mines in Nevada. Petroglyphs were traded with the Babylonian cubit. And 700 AD, from Fremont beginning, and 260-day August 12th, April 29th is dated as well. The upper right shows a large petroglyph panel overlaid in the gap window, and its composition records the full calendar system according to our analysis. Here at Perron Gap, you see this panel. Looks familiar, doesn't it? With Zapa's triangle panels. And it measures the winter cross quarter from November 5th to February 5. And the shadow marker measures the Babylonian cubit as well. There are many such measures there. I invite you to investigate getting the Perron Gap book and studying those. Now we jump all the way across to Florida. This map shows continual migrations from Mesoamerica to North America. This map is photographed from the Crystal River Museum in Florida, showing the migrations coming out of Mexico up into the eastern U.S. from Florida. This is the pyramid, main pyramid at Crystal River, in styles similar to Mesoamerica and elsewhere. The one on the right is a brass recreation of their sun god and measured with a cubit. Nearby Cahokia, we have to recognize that. It dates to about 1050 AD and included what they call the wood henge circle pictured on the lower right. The sunrise through the year, passing and recording the dates, different dates between these posts, similar to Stonehenge. The ancient Maya 260-day human creation calendar, defined at as often as 15-degree north latitude, was taken with Middle Eastern geometry and measures by ancient migrants to all of Mesoamerica, North and South America. As this data continues to be scrutinized and studied, we're confident that it will contribute significantly to documenting ancient world history, migrations. They didn't have to cross the oceans in the early ages. They navigated the shores by canoes, and that's well documented at Oman in the pre-ceramic ruins that are there. Asia trade, Silk Road, Mediterranean Sea to Persia, India, China, Indian Ocean routes were traveled anciently. Middle Eastern geometry and cubits abound throughout Asia as well. Here we got the Babylonian king Gudea, dating to 2050 BC. His forearms measure the Babylonian cubit. He had quite an ego and made dozens of sculptures exactly this same style. This one is one that was purchased by the Cleveland Museum that I photographed, and the forearms measure that cubit. One has that documentation written in the glyphs on the back. The figure on the right, we see similarities in style. India Buddha, 130 BC to 185 AD. We just in a short study here measured the length of the foot, which was turned out to be in one half the Royal Egyptian cubit. And other Cleveland Museum figures, Hindu mandala. Shows the directions like the Maya of the mandala. Circle, square, and with the four quarters and the diagonals are the primary reference points of these mandala. The mandala was said to contain all knowledge in Islamic tradition. Incomprehensible until we get to Zappa, and lo and behold, discover that seems to be the case, especially with Tree of Life stone, still a 5. The stone box on the right, when I measured the inside depth, width, and height, it all turned out to be the Egyptian cubit influence here, all the way to China. Chinese famous palace, Beijing, 420 AD, Ming Dynasty, where emperors lived. This aerial view at the right, in our testing of the geometry, shows the golden mandala drawn over how it overlays it. Pretty impressive fit, wouldn't you say? Comparison of Chinese and Maya symbols from a carved jade statue on the west coast of Mexico. It's a famous statue. And when this comparison showed up, we can't resist showing it. The glyphs on the statue, and then parallel glyphs from East Asia and China. We can't conclude without recognition of Thor Heyerdahl's lifelong dedication to trying to prove the migrations across the seas and the spread of sharing of culture. He spent his life without completely convincing the American isolation school. However, his significant contributions. His raft sailed in 1947 from Peru to the South Sea Islands in 101 days. And in 1970, he sailed from Africa to Barbados Islands, north of South America, in 47 days, all in these reconstructed balsa rafts that were early transport. And he argued for
It's oceanic migrations.
So this is curious. Excavation at Easter Island shows this standard God figure set on a pedestal, which was completely covered by erosion until the excavation. So that lighter stone underground has this engraving of a ship and fishing for turtles, which abound there in Easter Island. And Thor Heyerdahl went all the way, did a latex mold of this pedestal and put it in his museum in Oslo, Norway. When we visited there, couldn't resist measuring the width of the 3 staffs of sails. Measured exactly the Babylonian cubit. Passed that knowledge on to to
Polynesians.
the museum curator. And I don't know if they've incorporated it in their display yet or not. Middle Eastern geometry and cubit connections. The ancient world by transoceanic and land migrations from Mesoamerica, Mexico, art and architecture from 1500 BC. The ancient site manifests these migrations. Babylonian and Egyptian cubits. When my first discovery was in 1983, to the measurements of the antiquities of Azapa. Subsequently found used to build antiquities throughout Mesoamerica, previously shown. Here we're kind of winding up. The visitor center at Azapa in this plaza. I partnered with the owner to build this abandoned house into a visitors center. This is Antonio Damiano Turistan at the center with his wife and his personal artist who did the murals and paintings on the inside and the outside. Did a beautiful job. This historic picture, I just have to share this little detail. This is the grand opening. It occurred by chance. 3 elementary school buses showed up at Azapa from Cacahuatan, intending to visit the ruins, monuments in the Group B and Group A plazas, and they were closed this day. So very disappointed. They were loading up their buses to return. We approached them and asked them if they'd like to come and see the visitor center. So that was our grand opening day by that chance occasion, sharing it with some parents, school teachers, and especially the children, and walking them through to share stories relating to their early history origins. That's the purpose here. Panels on the walls, a reconstructed map upper right there, and banners hanging from the ceilings. Here I'm visiting with Mr. Damiano in the Zappa Sculpture Gallery. So again, showing these periods
Summary.
as a summary slide. Talking now orientation, volcano, the entire temple center, major orientation is to this volcano as the heavenly mountain with the North Star. And the Taumuko horizon to the right is the major observatory orientation in the book. This illustrates the Rosenzweig's LiDAR survey that documented the accuracy of the NWF map. This would be a Zappa map, and here in some detail as well. Finally, we just review or introduce the publications and website, garthnorman.com, zapacalendar.com, zapa.co for the Spanish version, and then vgarthnorman@gmail.com. So you can contact us for any additional information. Again, we encourage you to obtain these studies. They are just published at cost and for your expanded interest.